Hello there, and welcome to Not One for Neutrals. We've been speaking to fans of the 92, and today we've got another club that is struggling. We've spoken to Sheffield United fans, Sheffield Wednesday fans, Leeds fans, a Leicester City fan last week, and we know how that went. Now we've got Norwich, so here we are with Ben Ambrose, co-creator of the City Til We Die YouTube channel. How are you, mate? It's been a long time since we've last spoken.
Yeah, we were having a nice little catch up, weren't we? Personally, great, enjoying life. Football wise, not good, not great at all. And I appreciate that there are clubs struggling a little bit more than Norwich City on and off the pitch. But
Mm.
as a Norwich City fan at the minute, oh, it's bleak. It really is. And I sort of have been saying in my videos, when I do this little smile when I talk, it is almost to stop myself from just crying at the mess that Norwich City find themselves in. But it's painful, mate. Honestly, really, really painful.
Yeah, I feel your pain. I feel your pain right now, but we'll talk about Norwich and not Sheffield United in this video. So you've just touched on it there a little bit, but how would you describe being a Norwich City fan right now?
Miserable, directionless. It feels like the fabric of the club at the moment is being questioned. So Norwich City as a football club, we're in the middle of nowhere, aren't we, in the country? And it's almost like everyone in Norfolk supports Norwich, and it's a very community club. And with events that have sort of been happening on the pitch, you can almost just separate the football from the stuff off the pitch. But recently there was a bit of a debacle with stadium development plans and fans being moved. And I was one of those fans who would have been moved. And myself and the person I run the channel with, Adam, we made our feelings clear. The Norwich City fans made their feelings clear, and it became about more than football, which is why it felt so miserable. And Norwich have recently changed owners from the iconic Delia Smith to an American businessman and his little group. And there's almost that fear of teething, of look, things are going to change, but it's always the age old thing, isn't it? Is cash, and you get excited at the idea of money being injected into the football club, whether it's on players, whether it's on, as I said, stadium development, whatever. But at the moment, it's all very directionless, and it all boils down to one thing, Nick, which is Saturday 3 o'clock. What do we see? You can promise us X, Y, Z off the pitch, but as we have been, if you put this absolute slop in front of us that cost a lot of money, by the way, I think Norwich has spent over £50 million in the transfer window, and I'm not interested in net spend because Norwich's, I think, is, if it's not positive, it's almost positive, but I'm not interested in that. They've paid substantial fees for foreign players who, we were promised would be playoff ready. Liam Manning, and I'm sure we'll get into Liam Manning at some point. We've been
Mm.
promised is playoff ready, and we should be contending for top six, and to be second from bottom. Um, just mainly just because Sheffield Wednesday are in peril and they've had that 12-point deduction, haven't they? And
Mm.
it's depressing. Yeah, it's directionless. There's no sort of leadership both on and off the pitch. We've got an exec board who have overseen 5 years of just mediocrity, and that mediocrity is now diminishing into just below par, and it's going to keep sinking and sinking and sinking until something happens. And God's honest truth, Nick, from where I sit right now, I don't know what changes it. I really don't.
No, and we will get into talking about current state of affairs with Norwich City, but I just want to take you back for the last few seasons because I'm a Sheffield United fan. You're a Norwich City fan. We've had our back and forth. Not us personally. We get on really well.
Yeah.
But Sheffield United and Norwich have had our back and forth. We've both been yo-yo clubs in recent seasons. But in the last three seasons, you've had a bit of an underwhelming time. 13th, 6th, 13th. Where do you think things have been lacking in recent seasons before this season?
It's the project. I know football has almost become, it feels like an emotionless sport in terms of, you just hear that phrase, don't you, all the time? Project, project, project. And you'll remember it better than anyone. That Daniel Farker era was just so, it was aiming towards one thing, and that was survival in the Premier League. And I feels like they almost got there that second time round in the Premier League, where Norwich had previously won the title in COVID, which was sort of bittersweet, as you'd imagine. But the fact is that they couldn't quite do it with Daniel Farker. They couldn't quite supply him the players, and we're talking November 2021, so almost 4 years ago. And since then, they appointed Dean Smith, which is really where the fabric of what was built was just ripped apart. And you went from a principled manager with a defined style of play who had this relationship with the fans. And don't get me wrong, I think the time was right for him to leave because it just wasn't working. And it was 50-50. It was either has Stuart Webber as sporting director done his job right and given him the players and he's not performing, or is it the other way around? And we have now found out 4 years later it was very clearly the other way around. And we appointed Dean Smith, and that went about as well as you'd imagine. Sort of a whimper out of the Premier League, and then I think Dean Smith got sacked when Norwich were like second in the table because Norwich City fans know what they want, they know what they should expect, and you can call it entitled, which perhaps maybe it is a little bit, and perhaps it was at the time, but it just wasn't right. And very early on into Dean Smith's reign, he was digging out fans, and it seemed he didn't care. So Stuart Webber then brought in something I'd argue was slightly closer to Daniel Farke, and I'm talking like one step to the right. In that, David Wagner, and it was the idea that he was supposed to play this sort of attacking football, and he was meant to be a bit more. The phrase used around here was heavy metal. And the comparison was between him and Klopp of we're going to score more than we concede, rather than the Daniel Farke look. We're going to hold on to the ball. We're going to carve chances. It was a bit more let's get the ball forward somehow and score lots of goals. And he did for a couple of games. And again, because Norwich's recruitment just wasn't great, there's been a couple of gems sort of between Farke leaving it now. So Gabriel Sara and Borja Sainz are the ones who come to mind. But it's not been enough of it. And the fans have always had that lingering feeling of something doesn't feel right. And off the pitch, the club was going through a pretty big transition because Delia Smith was looking to sell the club. Which that instability at the top and that sort of that feeling of uncertainty clearly trickled all the way down to on the pitch, and the fans can always feel it. And Nick, you as a football fan will know it when you have that gut feeling that something isn't right. It tends to be because something isn't right. But it's been miserable, mate. It really has. And the closest thing we've come to recreating that let's get behind a project was last season, and it was Johannes Hoff-Thorup. And it was the idea that, look, we've got a new sporting director, we've got new owners on the way in, we've signed loads of young players. And by the way, under Dean Smith and David Wagner, we signed players like Shane Duffy and Ashley Barnes. We had gone from signing, and I'm not saying all the players have to be from abroad, but we'd gone from signing young talent to invest time in to signing Shane Duffy and Ashley Barnes. And we were just like, what the hell?
They're
And
Chris Wilder signings if I've ever seen them.
yeah, I would much rather have seen Chris Wilder managing them, to be honest. I really would have, and it was. I think it's meant to be. It's almost meant to be like a Wilder signing of they fight and they have experience and they can lead, but it had the reverse effect, and it went exactly as you'd expect. And it's been really miserable. And I was really against the sacking of Johannes Hoff-Thorup, and I'm being proven right, and I hate that being proven right. Would I take him back now? Absolutely. He has an identity, and we signed young players, and we were promised, look, this is a project. And then for some reason, we get to the point where we are now, where the goalposts have been moved into no, we want to be top six. And I mean, it's a whole can of worms to open, but it has been miserable. So to put it simply, it's been transfers, it's been change of ownership, it's been lack of accountability from top to bottom. In if we get relegated this season in the worst way imaginable. But this isn't going to be a jolly one from me, Nick. To be honest with you, it really is a culmination of the last 5 years just amassing to something horrible.
Yeah, I think we all know from Arsenal Fan TV that being happy on YouTube is not the right way to get views. So people are probably enjoying it. At the end of the day, a neutral fan, it's always nice to hear these ins and outs. No one wants to hear everything's going great. That's fantastic. The Sunderland documentary was way better when they were doing badly, not good. Anyway, let's. What I wanted to do is talk about off the pitch first, because we're going to talk about on the pitch. We're going to talk about transfers, the manager, as you've alluded to earlier on. But I was reading something last night, doing my research at last minute, that the fans were chanting yesterday about Ben Napper and Zoe Webber and like kind of getting them out. So what's the whole backstory to those, and what's been going on off the pitch?
So Ben Napper and Zoe Webber are two very important people at Norwich, and Zoe Webber has been here, I think, almost or over 7 or 8 years. She is now probably in about as high a position as she could possibly get herself in. And Ben Napper has been here. I think he's been at the club for 2 years, but basically had the wheel at his helm for probably about little bit under, because when he joined, there was this weird transition period which the voice of Norwich City fans was clearly listening to, because it was almost like they'd promised us a couple months of Webber and Napper, and we were like, well, no, we want Webber out. And then magically, oh yeah, he's leaving earlier than expected. And again, this is just another serious issue. So Ben Napper was brought in from Arsenal. He was their loans manager. He's quite young for the role. It's the first time doing the role of sporting director, and he was meant to be the bloke who directs where Norwich City go, transfers, footballing philosophy. They are the two main things. Um, there was a lot of skepticism before he came, because Norwich were in a position where they needed someone of experience. And I appreciate that actually the role of sporting director in England is still quite new. And what we've seen over the last 5, 6 years is so many clubs change from the classic sort of manager and the chief operating whatever they want to call themselves into the head coach and sporting director and technical director. Um, and basically, the reason we want them out is because Zoe Webber is on the exec committee, which has got sort of 3 or 4 people, and she has overseen some serious. It's not even mediocrity, as I said, anymore. It's really poor decisions both on the pitch and off the pitch. She's overseen it all, and if I perform badly at my job, or if you perform badly at your job, what do?
Mm,
We get held to account. We're
yeah.
made to either improve performance, or if we don't, then we're sacked. And for some reason, and you don't have to be a football person to see the idiotic commercial decisions that Norwich City have made. But not just that. It's the on the pitch and what's happening there. And I appreciate Zoe Webber isn't directly responsible for Norwich losing 7 games in a row at home, but you have to look at that bigger picture. And the bloke who probably is one of the two blokes really is Ben Napper, who has spent a lot of money. And don't get me wrong, he's done one thing well at Norwich, which is he's generated some really good fees for players. But what does that mean if you're just going to splash that cash on players who need a coach that isn't coaching them?
Mm,
He's completely lost his way. They've spent so much money. So Norwich's owner recently, new owner, went on the radio and was like, "Yeah, we've spent over 70 million quid since we've been here," which is almost laughable to some clubs, but to Norwich City, that is a sizable amount. Like, that is a significant figure of investment, which we're very grateful for the record. But Ben Napper is spending it so poorly, and I think so. Sorry, Nick, I don't know when this video is going to come out, but so yesterday, Norwich City lost at home for the 7th time in a row against Hull, and it was a significant game because it saw the inclusion of, I mentioned him earlier, Shane Duffy, 35-year-old Shane Duffy, who, I mean, just go and read about his off the pitch conduct at Norwich City over the past couple of years, because I'm not going to get into it through fear of a lawsuit. But he was back involved, and Norwich's centre backs, bar one, who's injured, who we all know is crap, that Ben Napper has signed, are on the bench. And
mm,
that really is just, that's embarrassing that Liam Manning feels like he has to call on Shane Duffy to play over Ivan Medic is his name, or Yakov Medic is his name,
mm,
and he's meant to be this like ball playing centre back, blah 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 blah. Ben Napper special, it's a special signing from abroad, and it's just so, it's embarrassing. It really is. So that's why people want Ben Napper and Zoe Webber gone, because something needs to change. And if it
yeah.
doesn't, as Norwich City are at the moment, it's League One.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's just unthinkable for a team like Norwich City, and what you've been through in the last 10 years. Like the amount of times you've absolutely ran through this league, and it's been so easy for you with some of the great players that you've had, like Pookie and Buendia, etc. Yeah, it just feels weird thinking that you're in the bottom three right now. But we'll talk about that now. The elephant in the room is that you have played 13 games, got 8 points, two draws. Sorry, 2 wins, 2 draws, 9 defeats. What's happened? Just a whistle stop tour, because I know that we could probably talk about this for hours and hours, and we probably will.
I think it's quite a simple one. You've got, a, I think it was 11, 12 senior signings. where we were told the squad would be refreshed. You've got a manager who's out of his depth. I just don't think this is a job for him. He's an underdog manager. He's Bristol City in the playoffs, and you guys played them and absolutely battered them. Them being there was a massive overachievement, and to come to Norwich, where, as you say, they've won the league at a canter twice in the past few years. It's too big of a job. There's no identity, there's no philosophy, there's no patience. You keep switching between a back three and a back four, and you chuck in 11 new senior signings that need to be nurtured, and also need to be told what to do almost, because there's no identity to Norwich. And we're at the point now where he's throwing players under the bus. He's talking about the quality. He's making statements by playing players like Shane Duffy, and that's why we are where we are, and Norwich have lost a lot of games, and all of those games deserve to lose. Every game you watch Norwich, they just buckle in the second half. It's funny because you look at the wins, and actually you could probably pick out reasons that they should have lost. So, like, a win away at Portsmouth was, we sort of hung on for dear life. Kovacevic saved a penalty. They hit the bar in the last minute, and we won. I think it was 2-1. Blackburn away won 2-0 because they were down to 10 men. And I mean, that's the two wins for Norwich, and it's a mess. And the fact that the manager is still being backed, is still here. I think he's almost shocked himself to still be here. It's not good. And Norwich City are as bad as they appear to be in the table, and that's not going to change.
The funny thing about that is, I think this speaks volumes. I was checking almost hourly last night to see if Liam Manning had been sacked, knowing that we were going to do this video today and my questions would be changing. But he's not. Am I right?
No, you're spot on. Yeah, he so
Just
the ownership.
refresh Twitter.
Yeah, no, he's mate. I've been doing it every half an hour. He's still here. I genuinely think he's as shocked as we are, Nick. I really do. He got very public backing. So again, this is it's the second today. He got backing 4 days ago. You can't then. I mean, you can, and I wish they would, but you can't then go and sack the manager that you've publicly backed. Otherwise, you compromise this relationship you're trying to build between owners and fans.
Yeah.
But it's simple as he needs to go. He needs to go.
Yeah, we sacked to Ruben Sellers after 5-6 games, all defeats, and you guys have been through how many defeats is that in a row now?
7 at home.
7.
In the league, I think I think it's 6 defeats in a row without a win in 9. I don't know.
Feels like it's time. It does.
Yeah, yeah, it really does. Like, how many managers can go through that vein of form and not be sacked? One of the reasons that Johannes Thorup got sacked last season, Ben Napper, in the very rare media appearance that he made, said, "Look, you can't go through this vein of form where they lost. I think it was like 4 out of 5 towards the end of the season. You can't go through this vein of form and expect to keep your job." He literally said that, and we were almost like, yeah, I suppose that is almost the age old football adage, isn't it? Of it's about 3 points on a Saturday or a Tuesday or whatever, and he wasn't getting that. So you're almost like, okay, cool. Liam Manning has topped that within way less games and is being
Mm.
publicly backed, and it's miserable. And it's what Norwich City deserve. It's not what Norwich City fans deserve, but trying to take that, and I appreciate that's what this channel's about, trying to take that objective point of view. The people who are running Norwich City is what they deserve. They deserve to be humiliated for the utter buffoonery that they've shown, and continue to show at very impressive levels.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've covered most of what I wanted to talk about with Liam Manning, but one of my questions was, is it time for a change? I think we know it's time for a change. But what I want to ask is there any managers on the market right now that you've been looking at? Because I know as fans, you're looking elsewhere, aren't you? Who's on your shortlist?
This is hilarious, and I'm so glad you asked, and I'm gutted that he's just got a job. But I will tell you who I wanted, and it was Danny Roll. I really wanted Norwich to. I know. I'm so sorry, but he was the
He's
one
a good
person I
manager.
thought
He's a good
he's a
manager.
fantastic manager, and we
Mm.
saw a great example of last season at Carrow Road, where tactically he just completely outdid Johannes Thorup. When I think Norwich were like 2-0 up or something at half time, and we came out sort of. It was in the period of Norwich going from pretty decent to not very good, and Danny Roll just did what Danny Roll does, and he just completely changed the team, and they won 3-2 or drew 2-2. And he's the one I wanted, and I think he would have taken the job. I think since being
Mm.
sacked from the lot down your road, since
Yeah.
being sacked from them, I think he probably has sort of almost been biding his time for the right job.
Mm.
And he will do a fantastic job at Rangers. And the other name, ironically linked to Rangers, I say linked to Rangers, managed Rangers most recently, is probably Russell Martin.
Mm.
He's the person I wanted when Thorpe got sacked.
Former Norwich player, isn't he?
Yeah, Norwich City legend.
Yeah.
I think his relationship with the club got a little bit bitter at the end because he played for a little bit longer than perhaps what he should have, which I think is a real shame because he
Mm.
is a Norwich City legend. Um, and growing up, he's one of those names that I will always be affiliated with. Um, and I wanted him when Thorpe got sacked. Again, I appreciate that the track record, and a lot of people pointing out his flaws, but he's a philosophical manager who plays football or wants to play football in the way that I like to watch football. So me personally, it was Russ Martin, and if he was to be appointed, I don't think I'll be disappointed. But Norwich City need a fire stopper at the moment because it's not just about can we get the season back on track to go for the top half or the playoffs. It's can
Mm.
we avoid relegation, of
Mm.
which I don't know if Russell Martin would be that man, but free
Mm.
agents, just to give you a name, I'm scared to say it, and I feel free to say it because it's not my channel, and I hope none of my subscribers watch. But Gary O'Neill, I think Gary O'Neill would probably be someone because for as much as he clearly isn't or wasn't ready to lead a Premier League team into, like for example when he did pretty well with Bournemouth, didn't he?
Mm.
And then they just made a tactical switch, and I mean look how that's paid out for them with Areola.
Yeah.
But with Wolves again, decent first season, almost steadied them, and since he's left, they've gone down the pan, haven't they? And he plays football in a way that probably isn't like Russ Martin, and it's not like a Daniel Farker where it's going to be possession. It's going to be how can we carve chances, how can we dominate the game. It's going to be more
Mm.
practical. And again, Gary O'Neill, affiliated with Norwich, played for us for a couple of years. Back in 2014, 15, 16, sort of that era. Um,
Mm.
he probably is the one that I think is most likely to put the fire out. But yeah, whoever does it, I mean, it's not a very appealing job. I appreciate I'm waffling here, but Norwich City in the Championship for a manager is such a prosperous job. As
Mm.
because you've mentioned, isn't it? As a neutral, you can see Norwich City are almost like the Manchester United of the Premier League, where when they're in a certain division, so Norwich in the Championship, you almost associate them with that top six finish. It's
Mm.
almost a part and parcel of the game that Norwich City are going to bounce up and down between leagues, which is
Mm.
why I think it used to be such a prosperous job. But now why would anyone join Norwich? I really don't know. And I mean, if I was a manager, I'd probably stay well clear.
I think looking as an outsider, I think it looks like a bit of a sleeping giant Norwich City right now, and I think there'll be a lot of managers that would be wanting that job right now. Funny thing you should say, you were talking about Russell Martin, and maybe he's not the right person for the job right now. Maybe the start of next season when he's had a chance to build. From a transfer window point of view, I could have sworn you were going to say Neil Warnock, and I was just going to be like, Ben, don't do it, don't
I'm
say
not one of
those
those. I'm not
words.
one of those. I loved his documentary. Neil Warnock is like an iconic figure amongst me and my friends.
Mm.
And I love that documentary. But I would sooner sit and watch the paint dry on my wall than Neil Warnock take charge of Norwich City.
Fair enough, fair enough. Now let's move on to talking about the transfer window because it's been a bit of a turbulent one. I didn't actually realise until doing my research how crazy it's been. Obviously, I know the player that we've got to mention that crossed the divide, but also you got Rowe going for big money. You got Signs, Callum Doyle going back as well must have been a big one, and of course Nunes going to Ipswich. So which of these players that have left? Because that you've obviously spent a lot of money in the summer, you've recouped a lot of money as well. Which one of those players would you say is the biggest miss from last season?
Nunes. Marcelino Nunes to Ipswich. I mean, he
Oh,
played a couple of games for us. I know it's painful. There
yeah.
are not words or facial expressions that I can put across to you that will express the pain within me regarding that
Mm.
whole situation. But it's almost funny that you take away the Ipswich element, and he was going into the last year of his contract, and there was the uncertainty, and you hear rumours of him rejecting contracts, and it's almost like okay, let's just enjoy this last year of him. We saw him a couple times this season, and he was the game changer. And I'm not going to pretend that he is sort of the second coming of Messi, but he was, when he was good, and he understood the division. He was very robust, very mobile, and just technically really good. And again, he was an icon because he'd scored that goal a couple of seasons ago against Ipswich in the last Derby Day win for Norwich. And if if you ignore the Ipswich element, Norwich have no creativity in the team or in midfield, and it's mental because even with Nunes, there's still that debate of, well, there wouldn't be depth, but Nunes was there, and he was almost someone you could take for certain. And to then very quickly just sell him to Ipswich, and to learn that he'd been lobbying for that move for a while, it's almost just like, wow, there really isn't any loyalty in football. The only other transfer like that is Andy Marshall to Ipswich, but that was before my time. Um, I would have been a little nipper back then, so I can't feel that at all. So for me, as a football fan, this is my first time experiencing true, like, being stabbed in the back. And you mentioned signs, you mentioned Rose transfer being made permanent, and I don't necessarily miss them. It's the nature of being an Norwich City fan. It's buy, sell, buy, sell. There's never any sort of you buy for the long term. And I think Norwich's best piece of business was retaining Josh Sargent. That was better than a 40-50 million pound signing. And he blew up in August, didn't he? He showed the league what he was about. And as Norwich have gone down the drain, he just gets no service. And that's such a football phrase. Oh, your striker gets no service. But this is the worst I've seen it. I think Timu Pukki in the Premier League for Norwich had better service than this, which is, I mean, you saw how the 2 seasons ended, and that's really saying something. And Josh Sargent, like yesterday, for example, he'll touch the ball a few times, and he's brilliant. Like, he's absolutely brilliant. And I can't believe that they've got themselves into a position where you've got, for me, the best player in the Championship. And every club will claim they have the best player in the Championship, so that's what I'll do. We have the best player in the Championship, and he's scoring no goals. But yeah, it's been a busy transfer window. Lots of money spent, lots of players brought in from abroad, and lots of patience needed. But it's just not happening, Nick. It really, it's just, I don't know. I don't trust Ben Napper, for example. If we get to January, I don't trust him with the
No.
transfer kitty to make the right signings. That's the worrying part. Like, you need to get rid of him before January. Otherwise, you're giving the bloke who's cocked everything up already more time to spend more of your money and just waste it. But as you can tell, very happy situation.
Definitely. Yeah, before we get into talking about obviously the money that you've spent, I want to go into Josh Sargent for a second and just because I looked at his contract situation, I'm thinking you've had him. It seems like a long time. Was it 2021, something like that, when you brought him in?
Yep.
You've had him for a long time, and I'm thinking his contract must be up at the end of the year or next year. He's 2028, and it's like he must have signed a recent new contract. But I was going to ask you the question: when's somebody going to come in for Josh Sargent? Because he's been great for a few years now.
They did. Wolfsburg in the summer. So he went to the training ground. He wanted the move, but
Um,
he rejected it at the end. I can't speak for why. I hear various things about why. Things that I'm not going to sit here and discuss just because it makes me sound like a sausage. But as far as I, as a Norwich City fan, am concerned, he was so close to moving to Wolfsburg, and for as depressing as it was at the time, it felt like it was deserved.
mm,
Um, and what is bizarre to me, Nick, is that so the clubs linked were, I think it was Wolfsburg, Burnley, and there was one other, and there was always that lingering feeling that he'd go to Leeds as well because they're newly promoted. His relationship with Daniel Farker, but the Leeds thing never materialised. Burnley didn't want to pay more than £15 million, which I find utterly bizarre because they then went and spent £15 on £15, 15-20 million pounds on Broha, the
mm,
guy from Chelsea. And I
mm,
was thinking, you've got a proven goal scorer in a division that you know is incredibly tough, but not just a proven goal scorer, an incredible footballer. Like, he's not just a goal scorer; he's quick, he's strong. I've never seen a striker with the technical ability that he has at Norwich City, like the way he dribbles with, and that includes Grant Holt, that includes Timu Pukki. The way he travels with the ball is it's almost like a winger, where he has that
mm.
close control, but you don't associate that with a striker. And I'm just utterly blown away that no one's took a £20 million punt, because that's all it'll take. And
Mm.
you mentioned that contract. Norwich City got him to sign it at a really good time, um, which is where he'd shown, because in that first season for Norwich in the Premier League, he started as a winger because Norwich had Pookie, and Daniel Farke
Mm.
and Timu Pookie is a relationship you just won't get in the middle of. So people often were like, what the hell is this guy doing? And I'm really glad, because on my old channel, there is a video of me saying, look, when we got relegated, I think he'd be a good striker. And since then, he's been absolutely magnificent. And I'm absolutely mesmerised that no one has agreed to pay the fee Norwich want, because they'd be getting a damn good player at a
Mm.
brilliant age as well. I think he's 25, 26. He's only a little bit older than me. And to just see the player he's become has been a real joy. And I'm utterly gutted. I'm devastated that we aren't going to be able to remember him as part of a promotion season, or as part of
Mm.
staying in the Premier League season. Like iconic strikers like Grant Holt and Timu Pukki, and even Cameron Jerome to a degree, not quite as iconic for the same reasons as those two that I mentioned before, but you associate them with playoff wins. You associate them with scoring a hat trick in the Premier League and winning Premier League Player of the Month.
Mm.
And Grant Holt should have been called up for England. These are the memories you have. Whereas with Josh Sargent, the poor guy, it's just going to be, you mentioned the finishes in the league, didn't you? 13th, 6th, 13th. That's going to be, that's going to be what he's associated with. And
Mm.
yeah, he's brilliant. I love him, and it's not just because he's like us and he's of the Ginger Nation, but he's genuinely superb. Like he is excellent, and any club
Mm.
where he'll go next summer, maybe in January, but any club who signs him, wow, what a footballer, and what a professional as well.
Oh, that's nice to hear. Just Harmer for us. I'm starting to think I actually don't want him to leave, but I want him to go and fulfill what he is meant to fulfill. And
Yeah.
if it's not going to be with us, it needs to be with somebody else, because you don't want to ruin your career by staying at one club just because you've got that affinity to it. Which I'm assuming you're thinking similar with Sargent. But we'll move on to talk about the money that you spent. So according to Transfermarkt, you spent 30 million euros in the summer. A lot of these players were under the age of 24 as well, so young players from abroad. And then obviously you got a couple of good signings like Schlupp, Darling. We were in for Darling as well, apparently, when Wilder was the manager, then he wasn't. I know you've alluded to it earlier that it wasn't a good transfer window, but it things point to the fact that it wasn't a terrible one.
I don't think it was a bad transfer window. I really don't. I just think, and I think this squad is a lot more capable of the performances, and to which they're displaying. Which, for me, you then look at the head coach, but we've talked about him. Um, if you want to almost take that objective point of view, I think Norwich have done some really nice business. Like Harry Darling on a free is remarkable business, despite the fact, and you can say this about every player for Norwich, but he's stunk the gaff out for the last 4 weeks. But on a free, that's cracking business. Jeffrey Schlupp was an example of getting a player on a free where it's almost the experience angle, which I will accept, because we have signed those younger players, and there are players in there so Matthias Fiskaren, Mirko Topic, Pelle Matson, where you describe their characteristics, you look at their footballing journeys and the way that they'd fit into Norwich City as you like to see them. They feel like sensible signings. And before I maybe mention a few more names, Nick, actually, the way I feel is that this squad was built for Johannes Hofthorpe in season 2, but
Mm.
something happened towards the end of the season where the goalposts got moved. I don't know who, I don't know why, um, but something happened. And what I mean by that is, for example, Fiskaren was the kind of player so he's sort of this attacking front man, very prolific, Danish, like Thurrock, who, why is he being signed for Liam Manning? Clearly had been thought of for Johannes Hoff Thorup. Same for Pelle Matson, another Dane, where he was that kind of midfielder that Norwich City were crying out for. And for the record, I think he's been pretty good. He's one of the few players that tries to get the ball forward on a regular basis. And to the dismay of a lot of Norwich fans, I know there are quite a few Norwich fans that don't really like him because he keeps giving the ball away. But he clearly was a signing for, and I think Topic is in that degree as well, of a midfielder who's quite robust and also technical. It's the kind of players that Norwich require. I mean, I'm literally going to name every player here and say they were for Thorough, but Darling, ball playing centre back, the
Mm.
goalkeeper Vladan Kovacevic, a ball playing goalkeeper. These were the players that we needed last season. And I think there's almost a consensus amongst Norwich fans at the moment that if Thorpe was in charge, he'd be doing a damn sight better than what Manning is. And there's a lot of individual quality. I don't think Ben Napper and his recruitment team struggle with sort of signing talent, but it's squad building. You can sign as many good players as you want. You've got to build a squad, and you can say as much as you want that, look, I'm going to build a squad for a role. You need to take into account your manager and your head coach as a person, not just as a role and what you want from them, but them as a person. But there's been a lot of astute business. I mean, there's another one, Papa Diallo, who has been injured for a while now, but he's meant to be this sort of speedy winger that Norwich needed last season, and it's just like I can't believe that, and that's why I think it was a decent window. There was a lot of excitement, but I just can't believe that it's for a manager who is just so uninspiring. Um, but yeah, it is what it is, and I don't think the money's going to dry up anytime soon for Norwich because they've sold a lot of talent. So in terms of PSR, I think they sit pretty comfortably. We all have to play within the rules, don't we? But compared to clubs that have spent certain figures, I think we should be all right in that department. But the main point, as I mentioned earlier, is I'm just terrified for Ben Napper to have another window of essentially building a squad for signing players for the sake of signing players. It's a bit of a frightening prospect, really.
Yeah, and talking about signing players, you're obviously going to need to strengthen in January if you want to stay up. What positions are you thinking that you need right now?
Creative midfielder. Um, it would help if Norwich knew the way they were playing, and one of Thorpe's qualities was almost the. I think it was one of his detriments as well, that you almost knew what the system was, you knew the way the team was going to be, and I think building a squad for that is far easier than a manager who flicks between a back three and a back four. But for me, it is that creative midfielder, because at the moment between Norwich's, I mean, first two thirds and the final third, there's such a gap of just, it's almost like no man's land there. So if I could, I'd sign two or three Marcelino Nunez's. I think Norwich City need to make that marquee signing to inject a little bit of creativity, to almost break the mold, to get the ball and carry it. Who that is, please don't ask me, because I don't know. But that is where they need signings, and they need to keep people fit as well. So if they could sign some new physios, that would be great, because Norwich's injuries over the past couple of years have been, I mean, bewildering at times. But for me, it's as simple as it is. I think a centre back would help, like a quality centre back, not sort of the slot that Ben Napper has been signing beyond Harry Darling. But yeah, creative midfielder, a number 10. If we could just get Wes Hoolahan out of retirement, that would do me. But yeah, that's where Norwich are lacking at the moment.
Fair enough, mate. Fair enough. That's I expect you to say more, like different positions, and maybe talk about a way of playing. To be fair, but it sounds like you just need that creativity.
We need the creativity. A manager with vision, a manager with a defined style that, one, as a supporter watching, I want, but as someone who has played football at an incredibly low level, when you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, whatever level you're at, things will fall apart. And this Norwich City team at the moment look clueless, and that is the responsibility of the head coach. He at the moment is kind of trying to blame individual quality of players, but if you send players out there with very little idea of what to do, then you could sign the best team in the world, and very quickly you'll see it fall apart. I mean, it's not the perfect example, but look at Manchester United. They've not had an identity for years because they keep chopping and changing managers, and they have managers who almost don't have a set way of playing. Like Eric Ten Hag, his style of football, what the hell was it? And amazingly, he won a trophy, but it's where Norwich City find themselves of they need that style, they need that. It would benefit Ben Napper as well to know what his head coach wants. But yeah, I really, I think it's just creative midfielder. I like the squad we have. I think it's far more capable. I think they all care. I'm not sat here thinking they're downing tools. But it's further up the ladder. We need changes as well, sadly.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that. I hear that. My next question was going to be moment of the season, but from what we've spoken about, doesn't sound like there's many things there. Actually, Locke's from the Leicester City fan channel that I spoke to mentioned about a young lad coming through, scoring his first goal for the club. So, is there any sort of shining light at Norwich City right now?
Oh, wow. That is a great question. Um, I think for Norwich City, it would probably be Blackburn away, but I wasn't there, so I can't really say that's it for me. Josh Sargent in August, we'll call that the best moment of the season because, man, he was on he should have scored more goals than what he did as well. I think it was like 6 or 7 in 5, wasn't it? But he
Mm.
should have had 10 or 11. So watching him in August was an absolute joy. And the only other, because with Norwich City, you always associate players sort of developing and going for substantial fees compared to what they were purchased for. I want to give a premature shout out to Oscar Schwartau, who's a Danish sort of, he's an attacking midfielder, but he's been sort of put out wide. And last season, he's 18, like he's a boy. And last season it was a bit like, oh, he doesn't look ready for men's football. And this season he's been a revelation. So watching him has been quite nice. But beyond that, Nick, yeah, Josh Sargent. We'll just say Josh Sargent because yeah, it's strange. Like, it really is a miserable season. I'm so sorry.
We love Josh Sargent, we do. So I'm going to ask you to put your neck out now. Where do you think you'll finish come May?
At the moment, bottom three. Not even, not even doubting it at all. I said to you before, this is the first time in my lifetime that I have felt like Norwich City are genuinely going to get relegated to League One. I have always snuffed at it. You go, no, it can't happen. And I think a lot of people watching will be thinking, no, it can't happen. But unless there's a change, they're going to head down because there is some serious sort of confusion and lack of experience in this sort of situation across the board. Um, so yeah, bottom three for me. So nice jolly one.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'm going to finish on an even more jolly subject. Because you guys, we were speaking off camera, you guys have been so dominant in East Anglia for such a long time. How has that switch back felt? Because, it might only be a few seasons, who knows? Things could change quite easily. But Ipswich do seem to be the dominant force now. And obviously, they beat you recently. Sorry to bring that back up.
No, it's almost like a roles reversed. So Norwich at the moment find themselves in a position where Ipswich were, and I don't think it's anywhere near as drastic because their ownership under Marcus Evans was a lot more 1940s Germany than Norwich at the moment. And yeah, it almost feels like a roles reversal. And I said to you off camera, Nick, I think the last time I was 7, the last time Ipswich beat Norwich, and at 7 years old, you're not aware of what's going on in the world. And I've never seen Norwich lose to Ipswich in the flesh, so this is a very new feeling. But God's honest truth, this is the most positive I've felt on this pod today. It feels like a weight off the shoulders because the last two derbies, so not last season but the season before, they were horrible. I didn't like being the underdog. I didn't like when we went to Portman Road and almost scraped to 2-2. I didn't like celebrating that. The home game was the most sick, including the playoff final and the playoff semi-final against Ipswich. It was the most sick I felt at a football match. And we won it. And I was like, I just thought, I can't do this. So it almost feels like a burden has been lifted, and losing the derby serves as a greater purpose to the need for change here, because the connection Norwich City fans have always had with Norwich over the last 16 years is, yeah, but we always beat or draw to Ipswich, don't we? We never lose to Ipswich. But yeah, it's depressing. I think it would have been a lot worse if Nunes had scored. He did line up a free kick at one point. And if you know anything about Nunes, it's that he scores. I think he literally scored 2 free kicks yesterday.
Mm.
He's deadly from there. I think if he'd have scored, my face would be a lot more downtrodden than what it is now. But it's like a weight off the shoulders. But to give you the answer that you would expect and almost want to hear, it's miserable. It's depressing. My little poster up there, I don't know if you've noticed it. That is from an iconic goal against Ipswich in the playoff semi-final. 16 years isn't bad, is it? 16 years isn't bad at all. But as long as we don't lose at Carrow Road, because if we do, then and we,
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me back on again, because Jesus, I don't think I'll be pleasant to talk to. But yeah, it sort of sums up where Norwich are.
Do you know what? Though? Thank you for that answer because I was worried that that last question was going to be a really, really downbeat answer. And do you know what? You saying that it's a weight off your shoulders is a bit more positive. So
That's how
I'm
bad
glad.
things are. That is how bad things are. Like the the other 45 minutes of this, Nick, have been utterly miserable. But that last question was almost like it's almost over. It's almost over. Fun and
And you
games,
know
though.
what? This is almost over as well. So I really, really appreciate you jumping in and giving me the lowdown on Norwich this season. Hopefully, both us and you guys will be out of the relegation zone come May and be able to build in an upwards way. But it's been great to chat to you as always. As we've said off camera, it's been a long time since we've spoken. We did a, I think, video in like 2019, 2020, and a lot's changed since then.
Yeah, and here we are together, almost in the same boat again, at the bottom of a division, just not the Premier League this time. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear.
Exactly. Anyway, Ben, thank you very much. If you want to go and check out Ben's channel, it is City Till We Die. And do you want to give it a quick shout out, Ben?
Yes, it's a brand new channel. Really enjoyed doing it. If you want some doom mongering, yeah, come and subscribe. It's fun and games over there.
Lovely stuff. Thank you very much, mate. And yeah, I'll speak to you soon.
Appreciate it.